A devastating scandal has just rocked Washington. Gwyneth Paltrow is trapped in an $84 million USID fraud scheme, and actor Jonathan Roumie's emotional response on national television has left America speechless. The shocking truth involves stolen taxpayer millions, secret mansion purchases, and a live TV confrontation that exposed decades of corruption like never before. This explosive video reveals the damning evidence, Paltrow's darkest secrets, and why Jonathan Roumie's fearless words are destroying the political establishment. The Capitol was already on edge that fateful morning. Power brokers whispered nervously in marble hallways, but nobody expected the nuclear bomb that was about to drop. The Department of Governmental Ethics, DUGE, had just released their most damning investigation ever. USA had secretly transferred $84 million to the Clinton Global Initiative. Every television screen in America lit up with the breaking news: $84 million fraud linked directly to Gwyneth Paltrow. The documented evidence was staggering in its detail. $3.2 million allegedly spent on Paltrow's extravagant lifestyle. $11.5 million more used to acquire a massive estate. $0 ever reported to the IRS. The nation stood frozen in disbelief. Families gathered around their televisions in stunned silence. Some wept at the betrayal. Others felt their trust in government collapse entirely. Paltrow immediately went on the offensive, calling it a vicious hit job orchestrated by the media. She claimed total innocence, insisting she'd never seen a dime of government funds. Her story was that her family was being crucified for helping the poor. But the evidence Doug had compiled painted a far more sinister picture. Wire transfers, bank records, her own signature on documents. This wasn't political mudslinging anymore. This was documented theft. Meanwhile, Jonathan Roumie was reviewing the evidence inside the studio. He wasn't angry or vindictive. He was simply determined to tell the American people the truth. What was about to happen would become the most watched political confrontation in history. The scandal spread through social media like wildfire. By noon, every major network was scrambling to get Gwyneth Paltrow on air. She arrived at the studio looking polished but visibly shaken. She sat down across from the host and immediately went on attack. "These are complete lies," she said, her voice sharp with indignation. "I've never received any money from US aid whatsoever. This is a manufactured scandal. I have been dedicated to helping the disadvantaged for years. Now they want to destroy me with fabricated evidence." The studio audience gave weak applause, but something in her voice cracked. The pressure was clearly taking its toll. Behind her, massive screens displayed her lavish lifestyle photos. Images of her $11 million estate flashed for viewers. The host leaned forward with harder questions. "How do you explain these bank statements? What do you have about the transaction records? Where are your tax filings for this money?" Paltrow's responses became increasingly desperate. "Those documents are fake," she insisted. "This is just more of the same attacks." But viewers at home weren't buying it. Phone lines exploded with callers demanding answers. Social media erupted with outrage and disbelief. That's when the host made a stunning announcement. "We have a surprise guest joining us via satellite, the actor Jonathan Roumie." The studio gasped collectively. The screen split into two frames. On one side sat Paltrow, her face draining of color. On the other appeared Jonathan Roumie, composed and resolute. "Good evening, America," Roumie began, his voice measured and clear. His eyes looked directly through the camera into millions of homes. "This isn't about partisan politics. This is about truth and justice." Paltrow shifted nervously in her seat. Her hands gripped the armrest tightly. Roumie continued without pause. "The DOE report documents $84 million transferred from USAID to the Clinton Global Initiative. We have proof of where that money went. Millions spent on personal luxuries and private estates. Not a single dollar properly declared for taxation. That's not charity work. That's theft from the American taxpayer." The studio fell completely silent. Even the host seemed frozen in place. Paltrow attempted to interrupt. "That's absolutely false," she said. But Roumie raised his hand calmly. "Gwyneth," he said firmly, but without malice, "this isn't just about money. It's about integrity and honor. You're walking in the footsteps of a legacy marked by corruption, deception, and betrayal of public trust. You need to face the truth before it's too late." The room exploded with gasps and whispers. The audience couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Roumie leaned forward slightly, his tone becoming even sharper. "This isn't a witch hunt, Gwyneth. This is documented evidence. Every receipt, every transfer, every dollar is accounted for. $3.2 million spent on a personal celebration, $11.5 million on a mansion, That's not humanitarian work. That's stealing from the American people. The audience erupted in shocked murmurs. A woman in the back row wiped tears from her face. Paltrow's jaw clenched as she struggled to maintain composure. She wanted to fight back, but the evidence was already public. Roumie kept his gaze locked on Paltrow, never blinking. Gwyneth, you claim this is about helping the poor. Tell me which poor community benefited from your $11 million estate. Which struggling family was lifted up by your $3 million wedding? The questions landed like hammer blows. The audience gasped audibly. Paltrow's face flushed bright red. She stammered her response. That's not accurate. Those numbers are completely distorted. My foundation has built schools, funded medical programs. Roumie shook his head slowly. Your foundation has been a front. The Clinton Global Initiative has collected millions in government grants for decades. Money that should have gone to struggling families. Money meant for job training programs. Money designated for veteran support. Instead, it lined the pockets of political elites. Your family name has become synonymous with greed, not generosity. The host tried to interject, but the crowd drowned him out with murmurs of agreement. On Twitter, clips of Roumie's words went instantly viral. Hashtags like #ClintonExposed and #Roumie Truth exploded across platforms. Paltrow's carefully constructed defenses were crumbling. For the first time, her voice cracked with emotion. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Roumie answered with steel in his voice. "Because America deserves honesty." Roumie wasn't slowing down. He leaned back slightly, his expression heavy with historical weight. "Gwyneth, I want the American people to remember something important. This corruption isn't new. Your family has been at the center of scandal for decades. What did America receive in return? Broken promises, endless deceit, a legacy of exploitation." The crowd murmured even louder. Paltrow shook her head frantically, but she couldn't form words. "Your family," Roumie continued relentlessly, "has been at the heart of exploitation for years. And instead of breaking free from that toxic legacy, you embraced it completely. You joined the same corruption, the same fraud." The audience sat in absolute shock. Some wiped away tears. Others whispered prayers under their breath. Paltrow's composure completely shattered. Her eyes welled with tears, but Jonathan Roumie remained steady, unwavering. Every word cut deeper into Washington's corrupt heart. The host hesitated, unsure what to do next. But the producers made a bold decision. Suddenly, the massive screen behind Gwyneth Paltrow blazed to life. Official documents filled the display. Bank transfers, grant approvals, financial receipts. At the bottom of one document was Gwyneth Paltrow's unmistakable signature. The audience gasped in perfect unison. Jonathan Roumie didn't even turn to look. He already knew what was being shown. "For everyone watching at home," he said calmly, "this isn't speculation or rumor. These are official government records. $84 million transferred from USAID. We can trace where every single dollar went." Gwyneth Paltrow's lips trembled uncontrollably. She glanced at the screen, then back at the host. "These are doctored," she said desperately. "This is all fake. It has to be fake." But her voice cracked under the weight of undeniable evidence. The audience wasn't buying her denials. Mothers in the crowd shook their heads in disgust. Veterans folded their arms in anger. On social media, the images spread like wildfire. Millions watched with their own eyes as the evidence scrolled live. Roumie finally glanced at the screen and spoke slowly. "The truth is no longer hidden. The American people deserve better than lies dressed as charity." Gwyneth Paltrow tried to steady her breathing. Her hands clutched the edge of her chair desperately. "You don't understand," she said, her voice softening. "My family has been under attack for years. Everything we did was to make America better." Jonathan Roumie leaned forward, his eyes piercing. "If this was about making America better, you would have built homes for homeless veterans. You would have funded hospitals in forgotten towns. Instead, you built palaces for yourself." The audience broke into loud murmurs again. Some gasped at the bluntness. Others whispered, "He's absolutely right." Gwyneth Paltrow blinked rapidly, her eyes glossing with tears. For a moment, her polished confidence completely collapsed. What remained was a woman cornered by her own choices. The host, sensing history in the making, stayed quiet. He didn't dare interrupt. Roumie's voice lowered almost to a whisper. "Gwyneth, this is not just about politics. It's about the soul of our nation. If you follow the same path as your family, you will lead America into complete ruin, but you can still choose differently." The studio was absolutely dead silent. America held its collective breath. Jonathan Roumie straightened his posture. His next words would echo across Washington forever. He locked eyes with Gwyneth Paltrow. You cannot heal the poor with stolen money. You cannot preach compassion while living off fraud. Gwyneth, America does not need another Paltrow pretending to care. America needs truth. The crowd gasped and rose to their feet. Some clapped in shock. Others covered their mouths in disbelief. Gwyneth Paltrow's tears spilled over. She shook her head, whispering, "No, no." But the damage was done. The host finally spoke, his voice trembling. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing something unprecedented." Social media completely erupted. Millions of comments flooded in, some furious, some relieved, all stunned. Clips of Roumie's words spread instantly. America does not need another Paltrow pretending to care. It was the sentence that shattered decades of political protection. For the first time, Gwyneth Paltrow sat speechless on live television, and Jonathan Roumie had just flipped Washington's entire power structure in a single breath. The producers switched the screen again, this time showing maps with glowing red dots across the globe. Haiti, Nigeria, South Sudan, and more. Each dot represented millions in aid that had been promised through the Clinton Global Initiative, but never reached its destination. Jonathan Roumie's tone grew heavier. This isn't just about America's money being stolen. It's about the poorest people in the world being robbed of their hope. Villages promised schools got nothing but empty words. Families promised medicine buried their children instead. The audience gasped. Some wiped their eyes as the screen showed photos of abandoned lots where schools were supposed to stand. Gwyneth Paltrow's face twisted in panic. "Those aren't my fault," she said. "We partnered with other groups. Things went wrong on the ground." Fans didn't flinch. "No, Gwyneth. Things went wrong in your boardrooms. Things went wrong when money meant for the week was signed off into luxury accounts." The crowd erupted. Some shouted in anger. Others simply sat in stunned silence. Jonathan Roumie turned directly to the camera again, his voice firm and steady. "To every American watching this tonight, understand that the $84 million from USAID was not the first betrayal. It was just the one that finally got caught." He paused, letting the words sink in. For decades, the Clinton Foundation built an empire of promises overseas. They told struggling nations they would rebuild after disasters, but the money disappeared. They told desperate families they would receive aid, but nothing ever came. This wasn't charity. This was exploitation. The tension reached its breaking point. Gwyneth Paltrow buried her face in her hands, sobbing openly. Her voice cracked through her tears. "Why are you doing this to me? Why are you tearing me apart in front of everyone?" Jonathan Roumie did not gloat. He did not raise his voice. He spoke with the calm of a man carrying a duty. "I'm not doing this to you, Gwyneth," he said softly. "I'm doing this for the people who trusted you, for the veterans who needed housing, for the single mothers who needed support, for the children overseas who were promised schools and were left with dust." The crowd broke into loud applause. Some rose to their feet. Others were in tears, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Gwyneth Paltrow lifted her head slowly, her face streaked with tears. The world could see her defenses had crumbled, but Jonathan Roumie's eyes stayed locked on hers, unshaken. And then he delivered the line that echoed across America. "Gwyneth, this was never about you being attacked. It was about America finally standing up to say enough." The studio roared and the nation watched history being made. Outside the studio, the nation was erupting. Crowds had gathered in front of big screens in New York, Dallas, Chicago, and Miami. Watching the confrontation live, chants rose in the streets. "No more fraud, no more lies." Inside, Jonathan Roumie leaned forward. "This isn't just about Gwyneth Paltrow. This is about the Washington machine that protected her family for decades. A system that rewarded failure, that looked away when taxpayer money vanished." Roumie pointed at the camera. "For years, agencies signed off on checks to the Clinton Global Initiative, knowing there would be no accountability. Why? Because the Clintons had power. Because Washington feared them." The audience erupted with gasps. Some clapped, others shouted angrily. Gwyneth Paltrow's voice cracked. "You're making it sound like I run Washington." Roumie turned toward her, calm but sharp. "Gwyneth, you don't run Washington, but your family fed off it. And America is done paying the bill." The crowd exploded in applause. Washington's halls were shaking. Jonathan Roumie rose from his seat. The crowd stood with him. The actor had turned a scandal into a reckoning. The broadcast ended, but America was forever different. In living rooms, diners, and workplaces across the country, people sat in shock, many weeping openly. They felt justice for once. They felt seen. News anchors scrambled. Commentators argued, but one truth remained. Jonathan Roumie had spoken words no one else dared to. He had flipped the narrative, and in doing so restored hope to millions who thought their voices no longer mattered. Gwyneth Paltrow left the studio in silence, escorted by aides, her head bowed. But the story was no longer hers. It belonged to the people who had just witnessed history. Jonathan Roumie closed the night with a line that echoed across the nation. America belongs to her people, not her elites. And starting tonight, we reclaim her. The audience roared. Families watching at home cried, clapping through their tears. My friends, you've just watched a story that shook Washington and moved the hearts of millions. If this moment touched you, if it made you cry, if it gave you hope, then don't stay silent. Smash that like button, subscribe right now, and comment below what part broke your heart the most. Your voice matters here. And for those who want to go further, join our membership to unlock powerful stories and behind-the-scenes features you'll never forget. Together, we'll keep exposing the truth, and we'll keep America's hope alive. God bless you, and God bless America.